Hey, world builders, welcome back to Shoutout Saturday, where I read your lore. This is number 22. As always, if you want to see your own thing read here aloud, then come to our Discord, submit something for the daily prompt, and tag it for Shoutout Saturday in the Build Together forum, and it will be read here. We are getting pretty big, pretty fast in terms of how many words are being written, so I will have to pick and choose or have people pick and choose for themselves in the future, potentially. But in the meantime, everything still gets read. So for day 223, the prompt was, what is an accessibility technology or system unique to your world? And this came from the Wanderer in the Discord. Probing the Great writes, the complex trade and entry in Rust and Blood. The use of elemental spirits is key to the continued survival of mortal kind. From factories to ballrooms, spirit complexes are everywhere. Garage doors, industrial cranes, steam crawlers, cars, even shoulder-mounted weapons. Spirit complexes can be seen everywhere. If you know where to look, that is. As previously mentioned, complex cores are made of any kind of glass or crystal. The most common form of complex core is made from quartz and sold as small 4-inch across spheres. These cores sell for around 5 stacks, roughly $55 adjusted for 2025 inflation, each one blank. Despite being relatively cheap to purchase, the act of inscribing a complex can be rather expensive, as it takes time, effort, and skill to pull off safely. While most blue-collar workers in turmoil can easily afford to buy a complex core every paycheck, the time it takes to learn the script for commanding elementals as well as the time it would take to write out an actual command script would either take too long if they continued working, or force them to cut their own income to get the script working. Then, they have to actually bind an elemental to the complex, and that is its own beast to slay. I think, Predwin, you might have interpreted this prompt or misread this prompt a little bit weirdly, but I still enjoyed it. I thought this was kind of fun, like a little take on basically why your average person is going to struggle to actually be able to use one of these. I don't think it's quite what we had in mind, but that doesn't really matter for Build Together anyway. Like, whatever gets you to write something interesting or whatever inspires you is what you should probably write anyway. The Wanderer writes, Spiders, Endrin's perfect solution to accessibility. While many creative ways to allow accessibility have been made in Endrin, whether it be mechanical prosthetic limbs with full mobility, temples and healers to aid in diseases and physical conditions, and the one that's fairly unique, spiders for those with mobility issues. In Endrin exists a number of species of giant spiders growing to a variety of sizes, but the main one's bodies are 7 feet long. Those who, for whatever reason, are unable to walk or struggle with mobility acquire trained spiders. These spiders act as service mounts in a similar way that service dogs can help people with lower mobility get around in as a mount. The spiders are very effective in transportation. They can go upstairs and, although it's rare to see, go up walls. They're not horribly fast, but 7 to 9 miles per hour is a very decent pace, considering, as well, that the majority of Endrin's roads are built of cobblestone and in some places are quite bumpy. A smooth, 8-legged creature is a great option for smooth comfort. Additionally, while normal spiders offer no emotional comfort, giant spiders can grow affectionate with other people, acting as an adorable pet as well. Food-wise, the spiders have a few options. They do eat bugs, but can eat fruits, pastries, and a large number of human foods, so long as they don't require much chewing. They eat a similar amount of food on average as humans, but do so in very large meals about once a week. This is cool. I really like taking... Giant spider is one of the few things that I kept in Atovia from sort of typical fantasy settings, and I really like taking something like that and looking at the implications and possibilities of something upscaled from that sort of realm of the insectoid, and this is a really great way to do that. I like this a lot. Nugget writes, oh, right, all of the major characters in this setting are disabled. I should establish that. An entry in Petrichor. Roughly a fifth of Petrichor's population is disabled in some way. It's very common and oddly encouraged given the decade's effect on physical health and the frenzied being the god of mental illness. Despite this, the city is built very vertically with rough terrain, so accessibility, unfortunately, isn't the best. Mobility aids don't differ too heavily from what would be recognized in our reality, such as wheelchairs, canes, crutches, etc., and with electricity, elevators and lifts are being implemented in more places to ease vertical travel. Ambrose has chronic pain and a congenital blood condition. He often uses a wheelchair and cane interchangeably depending on the day. His cane used to belong to his father, but not much more is special about it. His wheelchair does have enchantments woven into it, allowing it to fold down small enough to be carried in his pocket when out of use. As with most enchantments, however, it's expensive. It makes sense that an aristocrat might have a mobility aid like this, but most wheelchair users have standard, non-arcane chairs. Thaddeus broke his leg in his youth, and either through his inability to afford a doctor or being too stubborn to get help, it never properly healed. To this day, his ankle is twisted and atrophied, and he can't put any kind of weight on it without significant pain. He uses forearm crutches to get around and keep himself off his bad leg, and often sits down while he's working. By the third act, he does eventually get his leg amputated and begins wearing a prosthetic, although it's still used in conjunction with one of his crutches for better stability. Edward is a strange case. He isn't physically disabled, but does have several mental conditions including ADHD, bipolar disorder, and likely some form of schizophrenia, but none ever got diagnosed. The reason is interesting. Before joining the Second Estate and marrying Lockhart, he was a homeless orphan on the streets. He couldn't exactly go to a psychiatrist, but after becoming an aristocrat, he was suddenly surrounded by people who were much more likely to see his odd behavior as a gift from the frenzied, or the frenzied playing with his mind, than pondering the chemical imbalance in his brain that might actually be the cause. Thalia is deaf. She began losing her hearing around age 7, and by 10, she started wearing hearing aids. Her hearing aids are yet another piece of expensive arcane technology that not many can afford, allowing sounds to be more or less directly implanted into her brain. She can only wear them a few hours a day, however, as it gets extremely uncomfortable after a while. Most of the time, when not appearing in public, she tends to leave them off and use sign language for communication. Fun fact, this is why Ambrose knows fluent sign language, though it also helps for when he goes nonverbal due to his autism. Fun fact 2, Ambrose is autistic. Cool, nice coverage on this eclectic cast of characters in Petrichor. For day 224, the prompt was, which deity or powerful entity in your world is disliked the most or neglected the most? Perwin the Great writes, the Sanguine and Vampires, an entry in Rust and Blood. While Hader, the Bleeding River, certainly isn't hated on as wide a scale as Ragash, the areas affected by Hader are far harder to recover than even those claimed by the miasma. Cities, farmland, fortresses, anything affected by Hader's celestial corruption will be uninhabitable for years, if not decades, depending on how long the celestial's power was allowed to propagate, how long the Sanguine has persisted. Similarly, the Ragash's miasma, the Sanguine, is a dense fog that is closely associated with its celestial. The Sanguine forms a thick, almost liquid blood-red fog. This haze will transform mortals caught inside into monsters that can only survive with blood. Vampires. They aren't any stronger or any more intelligent than they were before their corruption, nor do they feel any innate need to kill. Some vampires have revealed themselves to the wider world, some remain in hiding, but all of them despite their affliction, a disease that demands so much of them. If a vampire doesn't soak their skin in blood regularly, their flesh will tighten, their eyes will sink back into their skull, and their extremities will begin to go necrotic. Many a vampire starves in their first week, as the knowledge of how to avoid desiccation isn't innately given to them once they become cursed, instead being learned through accident or prior knowledge. The vampires that still want to contribute to society are inclined to become surgeons, draining the blood of their patients to apply later, or perhaps bounty hunters that kill criminals and bathe in their crimson fluids instead of the innocent. However, not everyone is a good person. Vampires sometimes stalk the streets of cities, preying on the weak in the night, although they are dealt with very quickly, unless they are particularly cunning. All this is caused by the Sanguine, and that is caused by Hader. From those affected by its curses to those who simply know of its nature, many, many mortals despise the Bleeding River. What an interesting take on vampires. I really like people giving a unique spin on a pre-existing concept. The whole requiring the bathing in blood as opposed to the thirst for it is kind of a really interesting spin on this that I liked a lot. Nugget writes, remember to love yourself, you know no one else does. An entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. Perfect. Emrys Aurelius, the Star Child, the dreaded sunlight, the blade which will end the gods. He just wanted more than this. Everything has to be perfect. The gods must be perfect. If he isn't perfect, then why call him a god? And if he isn't a god, what worth does he have? From the moment he was born, he was destined for greatness, for stardom. He spent every waking moment trying to be perfect, studying the gods, practicing his magic, everything. He was a better god than most, but he was made wrong. He was built with a human body, but a divine amount of magic. It never mattered how much he mutilated himself trying to be perfect. His mortal flesh alone was reason enough for Stella to never look him in the eye. He still acts like he's perfect, however. He's a complete narcissist in every definition of the word, a combination of overload and him just trying to overcompensate and convince himself that he is still worthy of being a perfect god makes him quite insufferable. Everything and anything is to make himself seem more important. He is the sun that the very earth revolves around. Everybody loves him. Why wouldn't they? He's perfect. He's their savior. The gods thrive on worship, and he is a flawless example of what it means to be a god. He is despised by all who know him. But here's what people get wrong about him. He knows this. He knows how hated he is. He knows how people see him. He knows he will never be good enough to be considered a god and that he's just lying to himself. But it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hated he is, how many insults he hears, how many people want him dead. It doesn't change anything for him, because no one will ever be able to hate Emrys more than he hates himself. Interesting one. Kind of sad, a little bit somber. Someone truly built and created for a destiny of potentially self-loathing. Hopefully Emrys figures this out. For day 225, the prompt was, how do people of your world explain illness and disease? Perwin the Great writes, unseen divinity, an entry in Rust and Blood. The rot fiend sends forth its diseases to weaken us, to bring us down so that its legions may have an even fight. For it fears us. It fears Ram. It fears the might of Omdao. It fears the might of faith. We will smite its weapons one by one until its dastardly tools are no more and it falls from its crumbling pedestal. Haley Julius, 14th death tongue of Ram. Disease has always blighted turmoil, with most mortals assuming that it comes from Ragash, the writhing mountain. It takes a very well-studied scientist to identify biophages as something not of Ragash, but a symptom of something far more serious, something otherworldly. Most mortals that reside in turmoil would call illness a result of the presence of miasma. While there is significant merit beyond this belief, theologists and doctors alike know the truth, at least they believe they do. Everything in turmoil, from the most innocent of thought to creation of a war machine, is possible only because of the celestials. There's nothing within turmoil that does not have a divine source. Disease causes miasma. It is not a symptom of it. Therefore, it is not a product of Ragash, but of another unseen intelligence within the outside. Whatever this being is, it has remained silent and worshipperless for all of time. 9,000 years of silent attacks on mortal kind, all hidden behind the actions of another, unrelated celestial. These are the actions of something highly intelligent, something evil, something ancient. These are... who's there? Fear the faces in the dark. Probably the Great has another entry for day 225 in the guild setting called Interloper 100, Plaque of Plagues. Documented by Trinity, Class Malachite, Ouroboros, Rank Nu, Omega. Banishment Ritual. Upon manifestation and discovery, a delve team consisting of at least one scribe and one vanguard are to be sent to banish Interloper 100 as quickly as possible. All collaboratives on site are to ensure that members of the public are not exposed to Interloper 100's text, utilize quilts and linens to cover the plaque, and cordon off the public from access while the scribe is en route. The scribe is to enact the ritual on page 75 of the Actuary Bindings in Banishment's Grimoire, Volume 2, also known as the Lamb Shed Method. Exclude virgin sacrifice from banishment ritual and replace with salt burning and additional incense. Appearance. Interloper 100, Plaque of Plagues, is a reoccurring, singular interloper that, like Interloper 1, has proven to be impossible to permanently banish. The interloper is 45 feet tall, 35-foot wide stone plinth with a solid gold plaque across its flattest surface positioned at a 100-degree angle. The plaque has, presumably, every known disease written across its surface. This theory of complete disease archival on its surface has not yet been tested for reasons that will be mentioned in this interloper's hazardous effects. At the bottom of the plaque, there is a short, new rank sentence written with extremely similar penmanship to that of the unnamed author of Interloper 49. As is typical with most new rank writings, reading the aforementioned sentence is extremely dangerous, and thus it has been redacted from this archival. The only safe part of the sentence is the claim that the plaque is the origin of all the diseases written on its surface. All scuff marks and grime wiped away or added to the interloper are consistent between manifestations, encouraging the theory that every manifestation is the same interloper rather than a separate, similar one. Hazardous effects. If a collaborative or member of the public is to read any of the diseases listed on Interloper 100's plaque, they will immediately contract the disease they've read. While most diseases written on the plaque are treatable with hospitalization, others are more serious, and some other interlopers entirely, that can manifest without assistance from Interloper 100, such as Interloper 61. Great stuff. I really, really love the guild stuff a lot, Predwin, and you're getting really good at writing for this. I think it's super well described. I think the only thing I would love to see more of, and obviously, like, I have this in my own writing where I'm like, oh, I wanted to write more about that, didn't have time, right? A lot of us are writing every day, which is super awesome, but, like, I would love to see examples of the hazardous effects where, like, on so-and-so date, so-and-so read this disease, or, contracted anthrax from the plaque because they read it and before it could be covered in time by an operative or something, like, would be super kind of fun. But that adds more, obviously, but you could always go back and add something like that. Or maybe that doesn't fit the way that you're going for. I'm not sure. But that was something that stuck out to me a little bit that it's sort of reminiscent of, like, the SCP style of writing, like a logs section of the history of this thing being found and being dealt with. But otherwise, really well done. The Wanderer writes, lots of ways, lots and lots of ways, and half of them are right. Diseases have a number of explanations given. For the nations close to the center of Endrin, near where Kalantir fell from the heavens, they've had centuries to scavenge their fallen empire's books and knowledge. While the majority of their knowledge was lost, enough information about the nature of magic, of the world, and even diseases remained to grant a significant information boost to them. While thus far everything from Kalantir has proven accurate, it took a very long time for people to believe the Kalantir's very odd belief of how common diseases work, the non-arcane ones at least. They think that diseases are caused from insanely small particles of life that try and take over the body to duplicate. These bacteria and viruses are seen as a very odd thing, as you can't see them. While scholars and mages believe it, the more common folk think that it's a very odd belief, but hey, it tells the scholars and mages to wash their hands, so it's all good. For those not following Callantir's philosophy of weird tiny little life forms, they follow a much more reasonable explanation. The abyssal god Gorgith, who's over zombies, flesh, undead, and sickness, causes disease by spreading his vile influence through the air in the form of a dark miasma, invisible to the eye, but it seeks decay. When it finds an end to life, it will begin decaying it, trying to grow and spread from sapping their life force to infect them with gross wounds, either internal or external. When someone gets close to this sickness, the sickness will attempt to engulf them. This is why mages will make either an arcane or physical will keep you from getting sick. Afterwards as well, it is common practice to bathe in clean water, which its inherent goodness of pure water will banish the evil miasma. To settle who was right, King Felsov of Kaldor locked a group of mages, scholars, and priests in a room to settle it. After 36 hours, they could sleep and eat and whatnot. He wasn't a cruel king. They figured out that both were true. While the weird little bacteria and viruses made someone sick, the evil god Gorgith controlled the bacteria and designed new ones to attack the world with. It was a great win for science that day. Interesting combination and collision of, hey, the scientific observation we have in real life strikes true for the Endrin population, but also is driven and steered by some other fantasy extra planar entity. Nugget writes, how the Decayed shows its love, an entry in Petrichor. It's just the Decade's will. Words Ambrose has heard his entire life. When his mother died in childbirth, when his entire family dies young, when he was born sick, it's just the Decade's will. When he spent countless nights in the hospital for unknown medical issues causing chronic pain, it means you are special. There's a disease going around, no doubt another act of love from the Decayed, but evidently dangerous when combined with the autoimmune disease that runs in the Lockhart's blood. Within the last few months, it had already claimed both of Ambrose's older siblings, Jonathan and Gabriella, and his father's health was far from improving. Perhaps the most surprising thing about all of this was that Ambrose wasn't the first to go, with his general health being the worst out of everyone's, but yet here he still was, rotting in bed, his stomach churning and coughing up blood. Regardless, he forced himself to sit up and drag his wheelchair closer to transfer over to it. His father wanted to speak to him. Ambrose made his way down the hall to his father's room. The door was already propped open. When Ambrose came in, he found his father in terrible shape, sitting in his armchair, listening to the thunderstorm outside. He was somehow even paler than usual, 50 pounds lighter, and with the face of a man who had to watch his eldest 2 children die. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes, I don't have much time left, I'm afraid." Those words cut Ambrose deeply. "You really think so? The Decayed has favored our bloodline for centuries. This is just the way things are." Adolphus reached up to unpin the purple jeweled brooch from his lapel before holding it out. His hand noticeably tremored. "It's time you take this." No, I can't take this. It's the Decade's will, I'm afraid. It's he who brings disease, he who plants only the finest flowers in its garden. Even now, the gods weep for our maiden. Even now we are favored." Adolphus placed the brooch in Ambrose's hands, holding them tightly, lightning still crackling outside the windows as Adolphus smiled a wide grin, which didn't meet his eyes, an eerie look for the family known for always keeping a straight face. "Can you hear them?" he asked. "Can you hear the gods? Do you hear their screams?" His grip loosened on Ambrose's hand, his eyes relaxed. Ambrose grabbed onto his father's hand, tightly in a panic. "No, please. No, please, I can't do this. I can't do this without you, Dad. Dad! Father, please!" It was too late. Ambrose sat with him for some time, trying to process what happened. Eventually, he returned to his room to collapse, only to find it not as he had left it. A man the same age as Ambrose, about 17 or so, with bright orange hair and a red scarf, was already there, straightening out his bed while humming, with a bowl of soup and some roses on his nightstand. "Edward?" "Hello, Rose. How did you get in? Window, are you all right?" Tears welled in Ambrose's eyes. Edward noticed the antique brooch now in his possession and pieced together what had happened. "I can leave if you want." "Don't," Ambrose interjected. "Don't. I don't want to be alone." Without missing a beat, Edward came up to Ambrose and hugged him closely, Ambrose crying into his shoulder. "I'm here. I'll always be here." Very touching, very interesting. I like that we got to experience Ambrose's father's death. So this is, the moment in which it gets passed on to him. Very cool. For day 226, the prompt was, what was a single event that could have changed your entire world had it gone differently? Nugget writes, Primordial God Roulette, an entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. Timeline log of Victor Percival Cogwin, more recently and more formally known as Time. Apologies, I'm still getting used to that being post-mortem. Regardless, it seems part of my newfound duties with the timeline splitting following my predecessor's death is the ability to witness these alternate timelines. Let's start with this one. Seems interesting enough. If the primordial god's heirs got switched around, I wonder. I see that Chaos got angry at the others' treatment of him. Much like the main timeline, he turned the others against each other. Both Stella and Time were reduced to their souls, with Time remaining in Chaos's possession and Stella becoming lost. There was no war of the gods here, but Chaos's reign created a similar distrust from the humans regarding divinity. What they now lack in overwhelming perfectionism is lacked even more in order. Nothing makes sense. Physics don't exist for more than a day. Creation still goes against Chaos's nature, but he still wants to prove that he's capable of it to prove that he is capable of this new role. He creates Aurelius out of his own magic. I don't think it could get worse, but yet he's always had a knack for destruction and violence, I suppose, even as a god of creation. With a power set that only encourages it, he becomes a menace, spreading fear and pain simply for the fun of it. Gods, after all, have little concept of what too far is. Mors is still here. He finds Time within their crystal prison. He's still Chaos's right-hand man, but with no war, he instead used Time's power to at least try to keep Chaos in check. Try, anyway. As far as I can tell, Chaos and Mors's relationship is still largely the same, save for no longer sharing a body, but otherwise a god of death combined with the omniscience of time certainly helps with his job. And as for Stella, she was eventually found by a mortal, an inventor of sorts in the mid-1800s, whose normally white streak of hair is now navy blue, speckled with stars. He uses her magic to aid in his own projects. They're both creators, after all, and with that voice in his head constantly pushing for things to be perfect, well, he ends up making quite a name for himself as an inventor. Is this what it would have been like for me if I hadn't found Time? It feels wrong. My walls are no longer covered in clocks, and I don't carry my pocket watch. I know this is me, but without my obsession with time, it just feels off. Do I ever even meet Emrys in this timeline? No, I don't. I shouldn't be surprised, I suppose. Given the circumstances that we met, I don't imagine it's going to be a common occurrence in these off-model dimensions. I should check on him now that I think about it. After all, I'm not the only one who's changed after Armageddon, and he's never been one for handling things like this well. Cool. I like the timeline stuff. I feel like you're playing with some interesting themes here, and I know Petrichor is kind of the main way you write in, and I understand why, but I feel like there's some interesting connotations to a lot of the Time Traveler and the Immortal that we haven't really seen or read much of yet. Now, the Wonders entry, The Last Star in Endrin, is perhaps the longest entry we have ever had, and it is going to take up a chunk of time, and I'm excited to read it. And I also have the actual PDF here, and I will read from that. Thank you, The Wanderer, for giving us this large piece, and we will begin now with The Last Star in Endrin. And you, my father, there on the sad height, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Dylan Thomas. An ancient poem from an old world called Earth. It was a world inhabited when the cosmos still had youth in it. That was very long ago. If it had not been for its significance in being the threshold that humanity used to step out onto the stars, a world without magic that had taken to the stars, they had screamed against their helplessness and forged their way into the stars. Now, the entirety of the cosmos was dying, the light was there, fading. The stars had long since ended their post. Enurana stood at the last light in the dark world, and she would not last another century. It truly was the end. Arthur had read the old prophecies. He knew that creation was coming to an end. Nothing could stop that. But they did not say that the world had to die, whimpering in the dark, alone and afraid as their world froze. And so he determined that at the end, he would follow that advice. Mankind would die, they would go into the night, but they would not go gently. Yes, the world was withering eventually, but there was time yet to be had where it could thrive. Arthur would not let the world end quietly, not when there was a chance still to stand against the darkness. He had to do something. In the far past ages, they had worshipped gods and done magic. Powerful feats of the arcane were possible. In later histories, they had followed science, built great machines of power. Alone, neither had managed to defeat the inevitable fading of existence. When energy was lost to the howling void, they did not have a way to stop it. But together they might just do it. And here at the end of history, at the end of everything, one man had all the tools to try. Now, the magic source had been sealed for long enough that scarcely anyone knew it even existed, and those that did were scholars of great renown. That is how he amassed enough to build this city, the last little bastion in existence for as long as he knew. The tech, it still functioned, of course, but the old machines almost were magic for how strange they were. Strange enough for anyone, but Arthur wasn't just anyone. Many of the remaining people called him the world's greatest mind. Not that there was too much competition here at the end. 1,000 lifetimes. That was how long his wealth could last him. He could live in decadence longer than the world would last. He could burrow down, having his machines make him and his friends live in wistful expenditure till they all died. But what would be the point? There was a chance. He had one shot to save everything. 36 years. It had taken him 36 years of his life. Over half of his life on his mission. It had to work. The last light of Enurana had died out. He knew it would go out sometime within the next 100 years, but had not expected her to die out maybe in 50, or so he hoped 90 years. Even as he knew his project would work, it still stung a month later, and he still felt as if he could cry when regarding the old final star. As depressing as the world was, as cold, as dark, and as miserable as it was, it wouldn't be so for long. It wouldn't be so for long. The project had to work. The thousands of parents who told their children that it would be okay, that the world wasn't ending, he would not make them liars. He would not make their hopeless comfort a failure. Every comfort given would not be in vain. Those children, Arthur thought, deserve a future, deserve a world that loves them back, and I will not let that world die, not yet. He was going to build them a paradise. He had studied utopias. He had looked at the ideas to build them. Alas, though, few were possible. One that stuck to him was the one of Omelas, by Ursula K. Le Guin. It festered in his mind, a city of endless joy and happiness, and yet it holds one person in misery, one child kept in despair and torment. For a long time it had haunted him. That was until he settled on his solution to it. With one last deep breath, staring into the dark void in the sky, he steeled his nerves. His machine was ready. It that he poured his heart and soul into. It that he built with some of the rarest materials known in the universe, some he had not known existed when he started all those years ago. It that held within its massive complex the last hope humanity had. It that would be the final light in the dark void of the cosmos. It that would ensure life. It was ready. He put his protective suit on. It hissed as it sealed him off from the world, its air feeling stale compared to the chilling wind outside. The armor would keep him alive long enough to ensure the project succeeded. It even helped him move. His assistant, Arnils, helped him prepare and prime the material. Arnils wore his protective suit as well, though Arthur intended him to be well out of range of any danger. They primed the machine. The last hope left. Arthur told Arnils to leave the machine. The large device began to move. Arnils left the room. Arthur watched the dials, the pressure, the casing he made for salvation. All of it. After a while, it got to the final stage. In a few moments, he would see the result. 1. The lasers activated. Perfect. 2. The casings of pure eternium he made for it held. It could work yet. 3. The energy poured in. Thousands of gallons of mana. The arcane power source poured in. 4. The plasma entered into the system, rivaling thousands of bolts of lightning in energy. 5. It should collapse into a point. It should pierce the veil. Why is it not collapsed? 6. Did I fail? Was my work a failure? No, there has to be something. It cannot fail yet. I poured my life into this. This cannot be it. 7. It should work. It should be perfect. I did the calculations 100 times. What went wrong? 8. Collapse. It worked. My, it's beautiful. The veil is real, and it's more beautiful than I could have imagined. 9. I need to pull the full access lever. Only 3 steps left. Done. The full power is entering. 10. Oh my, it's perfect. The power of 400 trillion stars collapsing into itself per second. Long ago, they thought that matter could not be created or destroyed, that magic and material were finite and limited. Those beautiful people, if only I could show them this. A Kugelblitz in degree, nearly a reality unto itself. It is here. Hope. 11. Finally, it's past the threshold. It will hold. All I need is to get to the last lever. Oh. The radiation has started to seep through. No wonder my body tingles. No, I have to pull that lever. It will leak and falter if I don't. 12. Is this where I fail? At a lever. My dreams of 36 years and I fail at a lever. I refuse this. It can't. 13. Arnils, my good boy, you came. Yes, pull the lever. We have it in our grasp. Thank you. My mind thanks you. I know my jaw isn't moving, but thank you. And please go to safety. 14. It has been launched. 36 years and it's done. Good Arnils has gotten out of here. He remembered my lessons well. Good. He doesn't need to see an old man die. He should watch the new star in the sky. 15. That was my solution for Omelas. A utopia built on forcing a child to suffer was built on a wrong. But alas, if the child were to build Omelas, if they were to be the ones to cast themselves in the pit, then it's a sacrifice, not torture. My Omelas joy will be built by casting myself into that pit. Here I die, content in my Omelas. Arthur found he wasn't alone. There was a woman in the room, adorned in a black robe, half a dress in its shape. She had a sword of ringed crown over her head. It was glowing. It wasn't until a few moments passed that he saw her wings. She wore no protective gear, not even shoes in this room of radiation. She sat next to him, staring at where his magnum opus was mere moments before it was launched into the heavens to provide one last support for the world. For a little while, they sat in silence. He wasn't sure if he was even allowed to speak, like someone like her. She was clearly from beyond his dying world, but eventually he had questions to ask. His mouth didn't move. He couldn't tell if his lungs were even moving. Hiya, you did it. You did so well, Arthur. You should be proud, she said. Arthur smiled, or at least tried to. He tried to speak and found he did so, though he was certain his mouth didn't move. Thank you, kind one. What are you, might I ask? Of course, you're the one who did the work, though Arnils deserves credit for his part. As for what I am, I'm an angel. I work a bit as a reaper. I seek those who are dying and ensure that they don't die alone. No one deserves that. In the end, I think everyone deserves a friend. Arthur tried nodding. Would this work? My creation, I mean, if I might ask? Will it fulfill my task? he asked, his eyes closing. You did very well. And yes, your new star has brought this world 9 billion more years of light, a final age to this world. It will end like all things. It needs to end, but you, good sir, bought in its final 9. Your utopia might not work perfectly as you thought it could. They'll squabble, they'll fight. In the end, they will even forget a great deal, but they too will know peace, and the little daily good that they will have will far outweigh the suffering. So rest easy, friend. You have raged and conquered the fading of the light. One last time. Arthur did not open his eyes again. If it had been up to his body alone, he would not have heard her words either, but he did, and went home for the last time. Very cool. I like this melancholy ending a lot, this sort of... After all that struggling, there's still it'll still fade in the sort of eternity timelines of the universe's own timescale. Very cool. Also, like, super neat that this was inspired by Omelas, the Ursula K. Le Guin short story. I love Ursula K. Le Guin a lot. One of the most incredible world builders of our sort of millennium and the 80s and 90s and stuff. She's truly incredible. Passed away not that long ago, which is very sad, but she wrote some really, really incredible stuff. Thanks so much for sharing this short story with us. This was one of your more well-edited works, I think. It came together really nicely. From the Great writes, The Great Sin, an entry in Rest in Blood. The skies were already burning, the seas already choking. The Themestrians had caused most of it, make no doubt, but there was no reason for Oxkek to sow further destruction, further turmoil. Oxkek felt that for the Khazarah to survive, Themestria had to be completely and utterly annihilated. The other broods tried to assure the Oxkek that if they retreated to southern territories, that the Themestrians would not follow, that they do not have so much bloodlust that they would chase Khazarah kind across the world. Oxkek wasn't so sure. He felt that no matter where the Khazarah hid, no matter where they ran, that the Themestrians would follow. He knew that the only people for their survival, the Khazarah, would need to destroy all of Themestria. He knew that the only hope for their survival, the Khazarah, would need to destroy all of Themestria. They must be exterminated. The Khazarah, in their artificial nature, are not bound by the rules of Ophiax. They may innovate, design, and construct anything they want without ever bartering with the Winding Workshop. In the present day, they hide it from the wider world, ensuring both their own safety and that of all life in turmoil. But in the Old War, the Themestrians were well aware of the Khazarah's abilities of innovation and would have reverse-engineered anything the Khazarah threw at them, as they had time and time again. Oxkek needed a weapon of mass destruction, a great fire that would shake even the heavens. He needed the atomic bomb. Oxkek and his mad brood stayed behind as their kin fled. They barricaded themselves in the uranium mines of the Chromekra archipelago, constructing hundreds of weapons, all bound to elemental spirits, all programmed for a perfect, complete destruction of Themestria. Oxkek sent forth his rain of hell, layer after layer, firing off in timed launches and flying out over all of Themestria in a perfect carpet of doom. All at once, all across their kingdom, the Themestrians looked into the skies as the whistle of damnation fell from the sky. Fires reached the heavens, earthquakes sunk buildings, the destruction opened the first portal to Al-Um, welcoming the first daemons. The few survivors were hunted to extinction by roaming monsters. The White Palace was besieged, and its queen died begging for her life from the beasts of the Uthrap domain. And all the while, Oxkek felt proud. He looked upon his destruction, his malice and sin, and felt proud. He knew his soul was damned by her, but he felt solace in the fact that in his eyes he had saved his kindred. Whether or not the Themestrians truly would have chased the Khazarah into Kamar, or that they would have simply let the bugs leave, is unknown, nor will it ever be. All that can be certain is that this action, the great sin, would slam the hammer down in the first of many nails driven into life's coffin. Ooh, good visualizations for sure of this, like, all-encompassing destruction. Crazy stuff. For day 227, the prompt was, what is a food or kind of food enjoyed by many different culture groups in your world? The Wonder writes, Tanglevine, an edible nuisance. There exists in Endron a weed. Tanglevine is a weed that is nearly universally hated when wild. It grows in ropes-like vines, especially growing in dark, damp places, and has a Velcro-esque design in itself. Half the vines grow with tiny hooks, the other grows velvety. It also grows into large, messy, nearly bushes. As a result, it is very easy to get yourself tied up in it if you were to fall into it. The bush uses this to trap large animals and kill them. It's an omnivore plant, and the leftovers make nice soil. They aren't dangerous to smaller animals, nor birds, nor to creatures that have opposable thumbs, as it can be pried off with effort that any child old enough to play in the woods can produce. Tanglevine is also a very hardy plant. It can survive in pretty much any plant-existent environment, and like a weed, is very hard to get rid of. It especially grows in places where trees have fallen and died, but anywhere from mountains to prairies to grassy deserts can't sustain it. This has a large upside, however, that being that tanglevine can be skinned, boiled, or cooked in nearly any manner really, and eaten. It has a bit of an earthy taste to it, similar to a mushroom. It's totally not a fungi or anything. It is. Which is a very popular dish, as to many, it's an easy plant to find. It can be domestically grown quite well, and with good seasoning it can taste very differently and good. It can also be mashed and be reformed into a non-wheat sort of bread, eaten in mashed form for those without teeth, and is often made into noodles. It also produces round orange bulbs that taste sweet, which makes for a very good pie, or something to eat on itself. Because of its ease of survival, it is often considered a meal for poorer folk who can't afford normal bread, called poor man's bread. There are some drawbacks to this common food source. While it's great at giving minerals and a wide degree of vitamins and other nutritious sources, it is a lower item in calories, so it has to be supplemented with calorie items. Another drawback is while it's easy to raise and grow in a farm, it has a very nasty habit of growing in places where poop exists, especially after someone has digested the bulbs, as enough to regrow can survive digestion. Because of this, it is a very common plant in sewers. Nice, a ubiquitous kind of weed that everyone runs across and ends up using for consumption of in some form. Probably the Great writes, soured beef, an entry in Rest in Blood. It has many names across Turmoil, but soured beef is a popular, albeit hated, canned ration used by most factions in Turmoil. Sour beef is strips of cow suspended in vinegar, water, and salt. It tastes foul, doesn't stay down easy, but it keeps an army fed and resilient. Soldiers worldwide complain about sour beef, and officials worldwide tell them to get over it. I'm not gonna lie, I'd try it. Doesn't sound great, but I'd try it. Nugget writes, black bread, an entry in Petrichor. Black bread is a traditional food in Petrichor often found in celebrations, feasts, religious events, or even just everyday life. The color comes from Myrcana, one of the many unique kinds of mold and fungus that thrive in Petrichor due to the constant moisture. It's a deep black in color, and it's perfectly safe for consumption after baking. Because of this, it's often deliberately grown for culinary purposes. The process of making black bread is similar to that of sourdough, where the starter is left to ferment. Myrcana is included in the starter mix and is then fed daily with wheat and water to grow until it is used in bread. After the baking process, the toxicity of the mold dies, but the color remains. Pair with wine and enjoy. For day 228, the prompt was, has anyone in your world conquered flight? How, and how recently? Pervin the Great writes, the invention of the Sky Carva and the Day of Two Deities. The wastelands of Grala are traversable by the Nyan through their patented secret technique. Time and time again, the betrothed asked them to share their success. Time and time again, the Nyan assured them that it wouldn't work for the Kartoff. And so, for the first time in history, the champion of a celestial communed with another. Arad Cold, the fourth betrothed of Solar, took the lazy way out. He ordered for the most elaborate, perfect sum circle to be created to welcome Ophiax, the Winding Workshop, to Grala for the first time. Up until this point in time, the Kartoff had reverse-engineered all of their weapons and technology from the Far, or had gotten it from their pact with the Nyan. Arad thought that if Ophiax were to consider bartering with a country that had never spoken with it before, that the Kartoff would need to roll out the red carpet for the Celestial, and so they did. Thousands of sheep, hundreds of criminals, and dozens upon dozens of tons of rare gems. Over 3/4 of the treasury emptied for a Celestial other than Solar. Many berated the betrothed for this action, but he assured the public time and time again that Solar was all too happy for the Kartoff taking matters into their own hands. He assured them that if Solar truly wished against this, that he would never have brought it up. Finally, after 5 years of preparation, the sum circle was drawn. It took 3 days to create, carved into the plateau south of Havenhold, 3 miles across, the largest sum circle to this day. Arad stepped forward on the Day of Two Deities. Standing in front of the massive circle, he raised out his hands and called forth the power of Solar, the power of his goddess. The field lit up light of 1,000 days. It seared the eyes of people worldwide that day, as the skies parted around the world to show everyone, everywhere, what the Kartoff were doing in their northern lands. Turmoil is completely flat, so there is no horizon line to block perception between continents. There was the sound of gears and cogs spinning, clicking, whirring into place. A mighty clock rang out over Turmoil. The Remexians were not their namesake, still cowering in the forests of Ormdao. The Caldathans did not exist, nor the Castellans. The Halans and Khazara of Kamar, with their bleak-spawn companions, looked out to the north, seeing the most monolithic portal open over Havenhold, tendrils of iron reaching down from the heavens, lights in the millions descending over the people of Havenhold, and onwards granting all Kartoff this knowledge, this perfect weapon to fight back the tides of Grala and reclaim the wilderness for themselves once more. The what? A vision fought to present itself in their minds, a mighty metal bird spanning rotors and massive hangar bays, missiles, bombs in the space on board for 10 or more soldiers to live. It flickered in their heads, disappearing completely from their memories each time it faded away. Slowly, another image, another blueprint forced itself into their minds. A boat, simple, sturdy. It has a balloon and some propellers with some guns on its underside. It overpowered the vision of the more powerful blueprint, drowning out the more dangerous of the two, like beating it into submission. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't Ophiax, a celestial laying hands on another directly. It was unheard of. It was an impossibility until this day. As if to rub salt on their wounds, the Celestial did not allow Skycarva to go exclusively to the Kartoff. It shared the information with the entire world, with all of turmoil. The Skycarva would be for all to use with or against the Kartoff people. But in the dust of the closing portal, Arad felt something, a whisper in his mind. Solar spoke with him and gave him something. She remembered what it looked like. She remembered how to build it. All Arad had to do was write it down, and so he did. This is cool. I like that we're getting a lot. This 1 week we've gotten a few chunks of like really interesting sort of historical backstory on the Rust and Blood setting and some of the origins of like major technologies and major world events. How we've had some good prompts that have prompted some cool stuff from you, Predwin. I like it. Nugget writes, if man were meant to fly, he'd have been born with wings, an entry in Time Traveler and the Immortal. Victor puffed intently on his pipe while reading the newspaper. At one point, his brow furrowed as he read the headline for a particular article. Apparently, the Wright brothers were working on some kind of flying contraption, Victor said before snickering. It'll never work. What makes you say that? Emrys asked. Well, if man were meant to fly, he'd have been born with wings, wouldn't he? Despite what Stella says, there are a lot of design flaws with humans. Ever notice how if you sleep even slightly wrong, everything hurts? Design flaw or no, humans don't fly. Are you sure? Victor looked up from the newspaper to look Emrys in the eye as he floated above him upside down. Victor sighed. You are a god, that does not count. Why are you even disinvested in this? I like screwing with you, mainly, Emrys shrugged, but aren't you usually interested in modern invention? Invention doesn't go against human nature, flight does. Right, man wasn't meant to fly, but if he wants to rip a hole in reality and launch himself across the timeline, that's perfectly fine. Correct, Emrys laughed, and people call me a narcissist and a hypocrite. I see how it is. Nice, that's a fun little short and sweet bit on Emrys and Victor discussing flight, the sort of classic if man were meant to fly, he'd have been born with wings argument, which was always a little silly. For our final day of Shoutout Saturday number 22 will be day 229. The prompt was, is there a well-known con artist in your world? Are they a historical/mythological figure or still active to this day? Perwin the Great writes, Hensman, again, an entry in Rust and Blood. Hensman. But in all seriousness, most of the entire world knows of Hensman and his crimes against existence. He was a liar, a devil, and a cheat. His actions alone in the modern age destroyed so much and broke the supports of even more. The entire world has felt his sins, and the entire world renounces him for it. Or do they? Hensman's heresy was a mere 120 years ago. The Remexian archivists were very busy with repairing their libraries and their work managing resources in the Remexia-Castellum War, so they were only able to truly start their redaction of Hensman's actions recently, around 20 years ago. They started with all the bad things that the Death Tongue did, but in their sluggishness, the people of Remexia started hearing snippets of the non-redacted literature from those who could read. In other words, they hear of the good that Hensman did before his death. Some people, from deepest slums to highest towers, believe that Hensman was right. Interesting. That's cool. As literature spreads, you get an expanding of ideals, which is normal. And now for the very last entry of Shoutout Saturday number 22, Nugget writes, Thanius' reputation, an entry in Petrichor. The sound of a small bell rang as the door to the otherwise empty bar swung open and a finely dressed woman too expensive to fit with the environment walked in. The bartender, still in the process of cleaning a glass, set his work down as he took in her appearance. You know, the sign outside says closed. I'd expect a noble would be able to read. Yes, but the lights were on, and I have fairly important business here. And to what do I owe the honor of having you here, Madame Vane? Thaddeus asked, bitterness in his voice. I was hoping you could help me with something. Lockhart's consort speaks quite highly of you, Monsieur Thaddeus. What was your surname again? I don't have one, and Edward speaks highly of everyone. It isn't much of a compliment. He's your brother, no? Was. Then he got hitched. Why are you here? Your reputation precedes you, Thaddeus. I was hoping you could look a bit into a few things for me, mainly in regards to the affairs of my father. Thaddeus couldn't help but laugh. You want me to look into your family history? I have more blackmail on the second estate than the keeper itself. Half of Petrichor knows this. I'll gladly do so. Don't get me wrong, but I question your judgment. How does this benefit you? This information, while still unknown to me, will hurt me further. Besides, as I understand, you aren't fond of Lockhart, oui? I don't know what he is, but I sure as hell know whatever it is isn't human anymore. The man is just better at hiding his tracks than most I've met at church. Our families are fairly close. I'm sure you could find whatever it is you want from him as well. While you're at it, I wouldn't be complaining if he got arrested. I think you have yourself a deal, Thalia. Let me get us some drinks while we discuss specifics. I appreciate your compliance. Interesting. All right. Feels like we're getting a development of some kind. This makes sense, though. I feel like you've done a good job of we've heard stuff about these characters, and their connection, while seeming unlikely, actually doesn't feel like a weird plot hole. It feels like, oh, okay, this checks out. Thaddeus would be happy at really any chance at getting back at the Second Estate, and Thalia is more than happy to use that. So very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who wrote. As always, we've kind of got our main big three right now of the Wanderer, Predwin the Great, and Nugget, who are always basically writing every day, and huge thanks to them. I do think after this one, I'm going to start doing these every other week because I have some other video ideas in the chamber that I would like to start getting out, and it is kind of tough to do those in conjunction with a weekly video already, since I have all this other life stuff going on. I am not a full-time YouTuber, but thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more like this, please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, ring the bell, I guess, anything that that might help out that algorithm. And if you don't want to do that, it doesn't matter. It's going to stay free. It's going to keep coming out, and you hopefully will keep having a good Saturday or whatever day it is that you're watching this. Bye.